Okay. So Natalie, thanks for sharing about your pre-K Tweethearts. I'm really excited to share your Twitter account because I think it's awesome. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself before we get started.
Okay, sounds good. My name is Natalie Granger, and I teach at a small independent school in Northeast Pennsylvania called Wyoming Seminary. And I teach at the lower school. This, I think, is my 18th year. I was trying to count back. My husband and I have been part of the school community for 25 years, but I stayed home to raise 3 daughters before I went back to teaching. So once I went back to teaching and started in pre-K, we got this new dean who was all about technology. And so one summer I ended up, this is about 10 years ago, I ended up going to tech camp. And I was supposed to come up with some new tech project to do with pre-K kids. And so, I was working mostly with high school and middle school teachers in this camp. And I was, trying to think of something to do. And Twitter was kind of a new thing at that point. And, it was, what are you doing in 140 characters? So the thought that came to my mind was when parents pick up pre-K kids in the car and they say, what did you do today? Their first response is often nothing. And so I thought, oh, if we could just tweet a little bit about the day, then, your mom could say, oh my gosh, I thought you learned about grizzly bears, or I thought that I read on the tweet that you went to gym class. And so that was the idea behind starting pre-K Tweethearts all those years ago.
That's awesome. I love that. That's exactly what I wanted you to tell my students. So you started it so that parents could have that parental involvement. And then how did parents react to the use of Twitter in your classroom with the little ones?
It was very interesting. And the parents loved it. But what I didn't know and what happened is it evolved into a major part of my language curriculum, which is totally so the way that I use it for the first week or two, we sit as a class and we do the tweeting together. Now, when kids are in pre-K, the first trimester is learning the alphabet and learning sounds. And so when they're tweeting out the sounds that they hear. So they have a couple of different tasks when they get ready to tweet. One is they have to think of something to say, and we talk about making it into a sentence. Like they'll just say grizzly bear, and I'll say, well, we have to talk about what we did. So we learned about grizzly bears. And then we help them segment those words into the sounds that they hear. So it might look something like we might just be E. Sometimes they might have W and E. We help with spaces. Learned might be LD. Space. About could just be B and T. So it becomes this little puzzle, mostly consonants at the beginning, but the kids sounding out the letters in this sentence that they have come up with. And so 2 or 3 sentences every day. We started as a group, and then after a while it becomes a job, like you're the line leader, the door holder, the tweeter, and the tweeter gets to pick a partner. So it becomes a partner activity every day for 2 of the kids.
I love that it is a language development activity. I love that the bio on your account just says, I hope you like puzzles, because I think it's so powerful that not only are they learning how to craft story and tell, this is the story of what I did today and build those sentences in the way they communicate, but I also love the language development in the spelling and how if you go back through a school year, you can see the differences in their tweets. I think that that's really powerful because parents are seeing that development as well.
And, and so different things happen as well. We get a chance with 2 kids and 1 adult to talk about punctuation for those that are ready. We can talk about vowel sounds. We can talk about different things that the kids are ready for. But then the other piece that's really nice is that kids have that understanding that when they push send, that tweet goes home. So there's your social media piece. They have that understanding that communication happens so quickly in that very personal way for them. So it's really cool.
That's awesome. How do the students feel about being the tweeter for the day? Do they get really excited when it's their day?
Yes, they love to be the tweeter. A couple of years ago, I started this new bulletin board, and it has all these Twitter birds with their names on it, and I got these feather boas, so sometimes they'll tweet with a feather boa on.
Yes, I love it.
It's really cute. And sometimes, it's hard to I try to get them away from a pattern. Sometimes they'll get really stuck in a pattern. We had gym, we learned about grizzly bears, we went outside. So, as the year goes on, I try to break them a little bit, word things differently. So we're talking again about language. The other thing that they pick up, which is so great, is keyboarding, because they just use the regular keyboard on the iPad. And so when we go to write stories later in my story or something else, they already have that familiarity with the keyboard. So that's great too.
Awesome. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, because it's something we're going to talk about in class, is student privacy. And I know because I've looked at your Twitter that it's just the tweet. There's no real identifying information. But will you talk a little bit about when we're working with really young learners, negotiating that issue of privacy on social media?
Sure. When I first started it was private. It just went to parents only. And the school was very concerned about it. And then after 2 or 3 years, that's when I said, we really don't put names in it. That's one of the things the kids have to learn, because they'll say when they're getting ready to tweet, I played with Bobby on the playground. And I said, well, this is about what we did together in school. So it's, rethinking the day in that perspective. It's not just about me. It's about what the class did. And then, since we didn't do any names and no pictures, sometimes I'll post a picture of something that came to school, but not with the kids in it. So we just made it public for everyone to see. So.
And I love that it's public, because they have that understanding that of being a digital citizen, right? That like everyone's going to see this. It goes on the internet. And I think that's so wonderful that you're fostering that at such a young age, because that's the world that we live in.
It is. And that's what's really important. They're already familiar with phones. They're familiar with iPads. And, we have a responsibility to, teach them. And I do have, I have 6 iPads in my room. And so 3 of them I use for apps, but they have a 10-minute timer. It's very limited app time. They can do that at home. So what I try to focus their time on is the creative content. They write stories on the iPad. They blog on the iPad. They tweet on the iPad. So things that they can push out, reflect, and create. So
I love that. You're making me so happy. I love hearing about all the things that you do in your classroom with our littlest learners. I think it's amazing. The other thing that you talked about with privacy was that you're trying to get them to see the whole class. And so even though you're dealing with that issue of privacy, you're also building community. So they're having to think about, what did we all do instead of just what did I do? And so I think that is really neat too.
That's hard for them at the beginning, because they're so egocentric at this age, and that's normal. So again, it's just different ways of reflecting on the way that they think and talk. So, and then in their, in other places, in their blogs, they can be very personal, just what did they do? And so that's their outlet for sharing their own work.
Awesome. So if you were to give advice to a new elementary teacher on social media in the classroom, what advice might you give those young new teachers?
Things that I have learned when I first started being the pre-K teacher, there weren't a lot of early childhood people out. So I would go to these tech conferences, and it was always listening to what's new, listening to what's going on, and figuring out how I can use it for myself. And that's how Twitter started. Now there are a lot more things available. So you really need to do some research and find things that are not just playing and, that are going to make the time go by quickly. Make their time really appropriate and useful and applicable for their best learning while they're in school. So, and keep it really monitored. Only a couple of apps on the iPad at a time. But again, finding ways to make them in control of what they're doing as well, giving them the power to use the devices within your parameters that you're giving them. So
awesome.